Welcome back to Why Did I Get Married? The Terry and Diane edition, part 3. So, we are coming into the point of where the last film left off. Diane came back to her husband. He had another apartment that he had purchased. It looked like a house, but he had a place that he had purchased, and she confronted him at that place because the woman was trying to help him um, unpack his things. And she comes in and she comes to the realization, knowing nothing that Patricia had given them to help them work through their problems. She comes in and she says, look, basically, I've come to the understanding of the parts of this situation that I was the problem in. Now that I understand this, can you come home? It's pretty much where she's at, because she's come to the realization, I miss my husband. And that they would work on and talk through the issues that they had been avoiding, because it was a lot of issues that they had been avoiding that they needed to have conversation about. From their daughter to the tubes being tied to potentially why she did it in the first place, deeper issues, all of this. So that they could come to an agreement and move forward in their relationship. But he was a very kind man that he said, okay. But he wasn't really trying to divorce his wife at all. He called himself, when the men were talking, he said, oh, I ain't divorcing her. I'm just trying to teach you a lesson. That I don't have to be there. And maybe now that she see that I don't have to be there, maybe she'll come to the understanding. Men don't think like we do. Not to mention they friends in their ear. Because the devil always going to send that friend, that one friend, during your time of an issue to breathe in a spirit of confusion. I know this is right, but they bring that one friend in that's like, but maybe you could, she wouldn't know if you did. That's what Mike's character was. When you are married, number one, do not allow your friends, especially the ones that don't have good marriages, to give you advice. Have that group of married friends that you can go to that have good, sound, marital advice. And that may mean going to older couples that have been through the longevity of a relationship and they're still going strong. That may be going to other marriages. Maybe they didn't get married when you did, but they still married. Meaning, you may have just gotten married and you've been married for a year, 2 years, 3 years, what have you. But you got a friend couple that's been married 15 years, same age range as you, but they've been married for about 15 years. So they know how to get through confusion or some shaky waters. And even if they didn't go through exactly what you went through, they may still be able to give you advice on it. Because it may not be the issue that's the problem. It may be a communicative issue that stems from something way deeper than the forefronted issue. Point blank. She tied her tubes without consulting her husband. That stems from potentially a childhood issue that she had of being I gotta be independent. I gotta do this myself. I gotta. But she wasn't talking to her spouse about that. And whatever childhood trauma that she may have stemmed to the idea that she felt that she didn't have to talk to him about it at all. Maybe she saw a mama do something like that. Maybe she saw family members do stuff like that. To her, it was all right. To her, it wasn't a problem. She wasn't aborting a child. She was just tying her tubes so she didn't have to have one. So, where are we now? Some time has passed, and looks like it's been, I believe at the time that film was made, the first one came out in 2005, the second one came out in 2009 or 10. So it had been about 5 years. Terry and Diane now have a son. So she successfully untied her tubes and he had his son. Their daughter is now, I believe, 10 or something like that. And they're in a good place. And they're preparing to go on vacation again. And they're pretty much the relationship that's gone through their experience, but they're in a good place. So they go on vacation. Other drama is occurring with everybody else, but the next time we get to see the two of them, they're alone in their room, and he's getting close with his wife. They're getting close to being intimate. She goes to kiss him and calls him a different name. So this opens up a new door. She has been having communicative conversation with a man at her job. They are closely working together in relation to a case. This is something that we're not going to find out till later in the film, but she's been entertaining conversation with him. Let me explain something to you. I was watching something, I don't even know when it was. It was a long time ago. The person said something that still sticks with me. A person cheats 26 times before they actually cheat. Meaning, get into bed and have sex with somebody else. They cheat 26 times. What is 26 times before you actually cheat? You see the person. What does the word say about wandering eyes? It literally talks about in the Bible that when your mind is thinking about another person, that's just as bad as cheating. So let's say you see the other person and you recognize that they are attractive. Do you engage conversation with them? Now, sometimes it's unavoidable because sometimes it's a scenario where you're in a working condition that you have to work with this person. She was in a working condition. She was working with that person. She wasn't really taken too seriously, but she recognized. This is a situation that I kind of see this person, but I'm not going to cheat on myself. Now, the door is open because it's a working relationship. We see this happen in the other movie, Temptations of a Marriage Counselor. The woman was working with the guy, and what happened? He was constantly around because they had to work together. Now, getting back to this situation, this is when you need to pay attention. You need to pay very close attention. Some scenarios are going to be avoidable, but you also have to lay down boundaries and ground rules. The person crossed your boundary or ground rule, you may have to take the executive decision. This is a threat to me or threatening my comfort zone. I'm a married woman, so on and so forth. When it begins to threaten your comfort zone, common sense says, I'm going to tell my spouse. Let's look at the movie Obsessed. Idris Elba's character had a situation where the woman was interested in him. He didn't take the first couple of advances as an issue because he's like, I'm married, I'm not thinking about anybody but my wife. But when it did start to get out of hand, he wanted to tell his wife, but his wife just so happens, and this is the type of stuff that the enemy will do, when you're open to talking about it, the enemy will bring interference. Meaning, the wife will just be in the midst of a conversation, just watch the movie, just watch something. She'll be in the middle of, maybe she's on her time of the month, and you telling her something like that is going to tick that time of the month her off, or what have you. But it's the fact of the matter, the conversation needs to be had. Now, the flip side of that, in this scenario, it's a man to a woman, meaning she's the one that's starting to have feelings for another man. She needed to start cutting certain types of things. Now, I get it. In a law firm and your partner, and this is a scenario where you need to get out of that situation as soon as possible. Meaning, I need you not to call me unless it's business. I need you not to conversate with me. We do not have lunch together. We will only have such and such calls outside of the actual room that we're working this case on, so on and so forth. Let's go back to Temptations of a Marriage Counselor. The guy started to tap on that part of her that wanted to be intrigued by something else. So he started to lure her into him. Be very careful, especially those of you that are called to influential positions. Don't think that men aren't going to start to be interested in you because you're married. They're going to be interested. They are. You have to be mature enough that when you see scenarios, you have the opportunity to sit with the Lord and say, hey, I don't feel comfortable here, or what is it that I need to do? Do I need to immediately go to my spouse? Or how are you desiring for me to handle the situation? Because to me, best situation is an ounce of prevention is a pound of cure. She should have went to her spouse immediately if she started to feel feelings. But the catch is, did she start to feel feelings, and the element of the feelings in which she started to feel begin to cause a rift or a wedge between her and her husband that made her choose to entertain the conversation. Because all of that is a choice. And it's the element of, am I going to allow my ethics and morals to take over in this moment and the fidelity of my marriage? Or am I going to not? She chose to allow herself to entertain. You cheat 26 times on your spouse before you actually commit adultery. How? We see each other at work all the time. We're working together, so we have to have numbers for each other, especially if you're in a highly engaged job. An attorney, that's a dangerous place because attorneys sometimes they get pulled in on call for a case that they may be spending hours, especially depending on what kind of attorney you are. You could be sitting in an office going through files, judicial laws, and criminology or whatever it is for the particular case in which you are standing for. And if you're on trial, you got to get back to the docket, or the docket needs to be taken care of for this particular case, especially as a high profile case or a high energy case. You have to be available and on call at all times, meaning the person that you're working with on that case, they have to have clear contact with you. So it's an element of some case it may not be avoidable that the person have contact with you. But at the same time, it's like, what do you do? In the best case scenario, tell your spouse, this person is making me feel uncomfortable. And then if there's an issue between you and your spouse, you may actually need to deal with it if you're going to have to deal with this man. So that the issue between you and your spouse are squashed, so that the eyes for the other person are no longer there because you are turning your attention back to your spouse. You think the enemy's not going to use that situation though? If you have to be involved with that person for a period of time, he's going to make sure that the situation withstands itself for a while. But this is where God comes in. If God don't want that scenario, you have to come into a prayer posture where, okay, I'm going to solve the issue I got with me and my spouse, because God will allow you to be tested in that way. But if you pass the test with your spouse, meaning shift your focus to your spouse and make sure that you're dealing with that issue, the Lord will remove that person, that they will no longer be the person that you have to work with anymore. But she was enjoying the conversation that she was having. And then she took it a step further. She started changing her attire and began to dress a certain way. She was answering text messages. And I don't know if she was answering them while they were on vacation, but they had enough of a conscious relationship. So obviously her and the guy were not having real in-depth conversations through text message or any other case, because she was still allowing her husband to have full access to her phone, because that was a conversation that was had while they were there on their second vacation, where they were talking about, your husband has the lock to your phone? Yeah. Your wife has locked it? Yeah. Because we know when you're in a relationship with somebody, if ain't nothing going on that shouldn't be going on, your spouse should feel comfortable enough to leave his phone in front of you with the passcode and know she ain't gonna touch that phone otherwise, unless it's an emergency. Somebody calls it. I'm not available. I'm in the shower. I left my phone home. She ain't gonna deal with it. I was that girlfriend. I remember when in a previous relationship, the guy I was with, he left the phone at home. I never touched it. And it was kind of funny because he was kind of narcissistic. And I think he wanted me to look through his phone, to be honest with you. I think he wanted me to. And I didn't. I was just not that person. And because he would do certain types of things. He would leave notebooks and and he would tell me where they were. And I was like, and I'm not looking through your stuff. I'm not that girl. Never have been. I had a friend that she came to visit one time when he had done that, and she was like, "You didn't look?" I was like, "No. Why would I look? I trust him." And this is the conversation that Terry and Diane were having. He has her phone passcode. She has his phone passcode. They were the example. Getting back to the 26 reasons in which you will cheat before you cheat. Text, lunch, phone calls, if you work together, spending a little bit too much time with each other, changing your attire. That's about 4 or 5 right there. Spending time with each other outside of work. Going places in intimate places, meaning it's one thing to spend time with each other in neutral places. What if you're going out to dinner with each other? Going out to intimate restaurants? What if you're dressing for the occasion? What if you are entertaining? You see how the 26 times comes up? Spending a little bit too much time in the office at night? She's single, you not, he's single, you're not. You going over their house? As a young woman that I follow here on YouTube, and she said, "You married. I want to work with you, yes. But guess what? If I'm going to work with you, one, if you're going to be on the phone with me, I need your wife to be present. Meaning she needs to be sitting there here every part of our conversation. And if you come over here, she needs to be present with you. I'm not going to be accused of anything. Most women won't do that. She ain't trying to get accused of any kind of foolishness. And men, they won't do that either. So what ended up happening is we're led to the scene that busts up the entire scenario. She's getting dressed in the bathroom that night to go to bed with her husband. She goes and she lays out her clothes for the next day. Then comes to spend time with her husband. And he pulls away from her. And she's like, "What's wrong?" And he says, now this is what you call an attentive husband. He starts to roll off a list of things that he noticed. He says, about 6.5 months ago, I remember that day specifically. Now, a lot of men, this is an attentive man. If he remembers when, I think he gave a date, to be honest with you. You came home that night, and it was something different. You made love to me differently that night. It was good. And she was like, what are you talking about? It was different. And I noticed. Was you with him that night? And she says, "Excuse me, what are you talking about? Don't try to act like you don't know what I'm talking about. I've seen your clothes change. You don't dress like that. I was in a relationship before. Towards the end of my relationship with that man that I was in a relationship with before, he started exercising. See, he had gained weight. We were young at the time, so 24, 25 we were at. But he was a pretty nice looking guy. But he had allowed his gut to get to him. But around that last 3 months of our relationship, he started exercising and his gut was starting to turn into a six pack. And I recognized that because I remember the one day that I had come from the bedroom and he had taken a shower because he was preparing to go out. And I noticed that his entire stomach had been toned down again. And I remember seeing him exercising. He was planking and doing certain exercises around the house. And I was like, He was changing the way that he went out day to day. He was more kempt about it. And he didn't think I noticed. I noticed. But the one thing I noticed more than I noticed any other thing was this. We were in a intimate relations with one another. But we weren't trying to have kids, so yeah, there were condoms involved. But I remember, and this is my personal business, that he had bought a box of them. And not a small box of them. He had bought a large box. I'm talking this thing had to have had 150 in it. I remember one time I had asked him towards the end of our relationship, I was like, what happened to all of those? Because we weren't using them at the time. But the box was empty. His excuse, oh, I was letting my friend hold them. You were letting your friend hold them. Because he had a few guy friends, and maybe that was true. I'm like, the whole box? The whole box. It was about 150 of them in that box. We ain't have that much. Something else was going on there. And he's tightening up his body. Getting back to the movie. He says she was different that night. You came home and you had it like you and I had never had sex before. It wasn't how we do it. It was different. And I started to notice that every time we did, after you came back from XYZ, it was different. And then your clothes changed. And then this changed. And then this changed. And this changed. And I need to ask you a question. Are you sleeping with him? And she's like, Terry, but we didn't. A man knows. Just like a woman knows. Be careful. They say awareness lets the heart grow fonder, but if you allow too much distance to come between you and your spouse, you are creating a scenario that can destroy your marriage, and you didn't even know it happened. Date your spouse. Continue to keep the attention between the two of you. Make sure you're keeping yourself. Make sure you're keeping your body. There are going to be seasons you're going to get leeway. If you got pregnant, your husband ain't going to be looking for you to be looking like a size 2. You just gave birth to a child, 2 children, 3 children, 4 children, whatever the amount of children that the Lord blesses you with. He ain't going to be looking for you to have a 6-pack right then. He ain't going to be looking for it to be all tight and right. He's going to give you a little bit of time to get, but don't sit up there and say, oh, well, he ain't looking for us, so I'm going to just not. No, you need to, as soon as you get clearance from the doctor, to start exercising. Exercise with your spouse. If your spouse is athletic, you want to spend time together, let's exercise together. Maybe you may not get the time, and hey, it don't have to be every single day. I guarantee you, as soon as you come off of whatever type of rest you need from your body after giving birth, it's going to take a minute. And if your husband's attentive enough, he'll understand that maybe you're coming with him to exercise because of the fact that 1, you need the exercise, 2, you want the support system, 3, maybe, just maybe, you want to have that quality time with one another and find a new way to maintain your relationship in this new space. I remember there was a guy. I used to walk around the park several years ago, and it was around about 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and I would see him sometimes in the morning on the weekends. His wife had twins, and he would always come out with this double stroller, and he would do his jogs with the babies. I'm like, Jesus, let my spouse be that kind of husband. It's like, yeah, we gonna go out in the mornings and just with our kids. Because, for one, pushing the strollers, it works a certain muscle in the body, plus in the momentum of the repetitive movement will actually put the children to sleep.